cheer you up till your ship comes in. Lovable old fellow playing an old tune. He comes round every afternoon. Raggedy old minstrel wearing a big grin. You love the man with the mandolin. All the kids follow, all the kids holler to the windows above. Mama throw a nickel and the man'll pick a little tune we love. Open your heart, let the music in. There goes the man with the mandolin.
Capital on May 4th of that year, whereas the University of Iowa was founded on February 25th, 1847, and was Iowa's first public institution of higher learning. And whereas in 1857 the state capital was moved to Des Moines, leaving the University of Iowa to develop as the chief center of interest within the city. Whereas for over 150 years the University of Iowa has been educating young people who have made positive impacts in this community as well as the state and throughout the world. Whereas on September 28, 2001, the University of Iowa will dedicate the Siemens Center for the Engineering, Arts, and Sciences. Now, therefore, I, Ernest W. Lehman, Mayor of the City of Iowa City, Iowa, do hereby proclaim September 28, 2001 to be Siemens Center for the Arts and Sciences Day in Iowa City, and urge citizens as well as visitors to our city to appreciate the contributions of the university and city to make this community the special place that it is.
Here to accept is Fred Stryker, Director of External Relations, College of Engineering.
Good evening. My name is Fred Stryker. I'm the Director of External Relations for the College of Engineering. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, on behalf of Gary Siemens and the College of Engineering, thank you. This is a very special occasion for the community, and I mean that not only for Iowa City and the university, but the College of Engineering, which is our community. Gary Siemens was actually born in Davenport, and he's traveled the world in his career, but Iowa City is his home, and the University of Iowa is where he got his initial education, his higher education. He treats this place as it is his hometown and comes back often. His mother still lives here. His mother and father moved here when he was at a very early age. In fact, one of his fond memories is, in fact, going to his grandmother's house on Burlington Street, actually passing the old engineering building, which probably in his early days was about what it was like about 5 years ago. Hadn't changed that much in about 30-some years. So we are celebrating the fact that we have renamed it the Siemens Center for the Engineering, Arts, and Sciences. And Gary is as proud of this college and the university as an icon of technology in the state of Iowa, and especially in Iowa City. We've got dozens of our faculty and staff who are Iowa Cityans, And in fact, our faculty generate a little bit over $22 million a year in grants and contracts that come back into the state and back into the city. So on behalf of Gary again and the college, thank you. And an invitation is for anyone from the city of Iowa City to partake in the activities 3:30 p.m. on Friday afternoon on Capitol Street. And we invite you all to join us. Thank you again very much.
Thank you. Item number 3 is consider adoption of the consent calendar as presented or amended.
Move adoption.
Second.
Moved by Champion, seconded by Vanderhoff. Discussion.
Just like to point out there's a public hearing for October 23rd. We're setting a public hearing for amending the urban renewal plan, which will allow possible tax abatements for future development. So people are welcome to comment on that. It's for downtown urban renewal. Thank you.
Other discussion? Roll call.
Vanderhoff.
Yes.
Wilburn.
Yes.
Champion.
Yes.
Canner.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
O'Donnell.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 4 is public discussion. This is the time reserved for the public to comment on items that do not otherwise appear on the agenda. If you wish to address the council, please sign in, give your name, address, and limit your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Jerry Hansen, and I'm chairman of Weatherby Friends and Neighbors, local neighborhood association. And I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to have a committee to discuss our neighborhood council proposal for a new nuisance ordinance in town. I'd like to strongly urge you to consider having a neutral party, somebody that is maybe neighborhood oriented, be the chair of this committee. I think it would go a long way toward people's fears about the outcome of what's going to happen in this committee. I'd like to say that this ordinance is needed because in my neighborhood, the ordinance is not about cars parked on lawns. It's not about, party houses. It's about safety and tranquility in our neighborhoods. And I know that Weatherby has been plagued by terrorism, and I don't use that term loosely because Webster's defines terrorism as systematic intimidation. And I think that's precisely what's been going on with the gang activity that we have in the Weatherby neighborhood. It has gotten us drive-by shootings, it's got suspicious deaths by fire, it has gang activity, it has drug dealing, it has all these things surrounding it, and all of these things, in our opinion, point back to housing issues. And so we would like you to carefully consider who chairs this committee. And I'd also like you to remember that there's a plaque right on the other side of this wall. And it says that this house shall stand for the happiness, safety, and advancement of all the people of our beautiful city. I think that says it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Incidentally, Jerry, if you have suggestions for that position, talk to the council folks. Okay?
Good evening. My name is LaVon Horton. You have my letter in your packet, and I'm just standing in regard to the option of extending the franchise or ending the franchise with Mid-American Utility. I lived in Iowa City for in a community which had a public utility for 20 years, and the community benefited greatly from that community. And I know you're thinking, oh, well, this is impossible. We just have too much on our plates. But as soon as the plate gets a little bit empty, the line starts forming for filling it up again, and that's why I'm standing here. I know that that community benefited so greatly from having a municipal utility because not only did we have lower rates, the utility was able to do many things for us in forms of new tennis courts or even Christmas bonuses. That's beside the lower rates. It simply doesn't make business sense to me to be sending our monies out of town when we can have a municipal utility. And I know we don't have the plant, which the original municipal utilities did. But I think there's a way of doing it. And if the community wills it and really wants it, I know they can do it. I worked on the committee that got the municipal utility where I lived. It was in Osage, Iowa at the time. And I do remember that it takes a will to do it. And the franchised people the franchised utility does not want to give up that franchise. So it almost takes an Aaron Brockovich to do it. So I would like to see us work toward a goal of getting municipal utility and to explore all the avenues that you might have to work toward that end when it is feasible. So thank you very much. I appreciate your public service.
Thank you.
Are we supposed to do this ahead of time?
Doesn't make any difference as long as we get it done.
I'm new at this. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tim Walker. I am here for the same reason as Jerry Hansen. He and I have worked together on the proposed amendment that you spoke about last night, and I thank you for your time and attention to that. Because this amendment is proposing increased enforcement by the police and by the Housing and Inspection Services, the Neighborhood Council Housing Subcommittee really does believe that it should not be chaired by a person from either of those offices, because we just worry that it would skew the results. We would like an outside community, just civilian to chair it. So I appreciate your call for nominations.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
How do we intend to pick that chair? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
You know, only one, I would think that perhaps when we get the report back after, we're going to get a report at our next work session after the meeting that Doug was talking about last night. And we, hopefully at that time, we'll have some idea who the people are. I think we can certainly deal with that at that point. And I think that these are good suggestions.
At our next work session?
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Lori Benz. I live at 2012 Dunlap Court in Iowa City, and I'm your appointee to the Senior Center Commission. I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to bring you up to date on some of the events and activities there at the Senior Center. Many of you were at some of the 20th anniversary celebration events earlier this month, and we had very good attendance for the recognition of our 20-year volunteers. Incredibly, there were 9 individuals who were honored who have continuously volunteered at the center since 1981, and that's quite a distinction. I also want to let you know, though, that a few events had to be rescheduled due to the national events of the week of September 11th. And I wanted to tell you about the dates that those are going to take place and invite you to participate if you're able. The first activity will be on Thursday, October 4th at 1 o'clock, which is the Senior Center Skywalk dedication. And there will be a reception immediately following the dedication. As you know, this was a concerted fundraising effort and was successfully accomplished, and thanks to your support, actually has materialized and will be officially dedicated. In conjunction with that, on Friday of this week, I just want to let you know that several members of the Senior Center's Strategic Planning Committee for the Skywalk project will be receiving the Governor's Volunteerism Award. Those individuals are Jay Honahan, Terry Miller, and Joanne Hora. They were the key individuals that led the fundraising project, and they will be honored at Coe College this Friday, September 28th, to receive that Governor's Award. Next, again, in conjunction with the celebration, I want to invite you to the Senior Center's an historical program that looks at the past 20 years of the Senior Center, including many interviews that were conducted by the volunteers of individuals who will relate anecdote stories and other descriptions of the center's early years through the present. That's going to take place on Tuesday, October 9th, and at 2 o'clock it will be led by Dr. Lauren Horton, and I think that's going to be an enjoyable program. Finally, I just want to let you know that the center's accreditation process is continuing, and on October 24th and 25th, there will be 2 representatives from the National Council on Aging, the National Institute of Senior Centers, who will come to Iowa City to begin the review process for that accreditation. And Linda Copping, the director, the Senior Center's director, is coordinating all of those events. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that you will be able to come to some of those special events.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori.
My name is Brian Davis. I live at 1001 Oak Crest, and I wanted to just make another quick endorsement for looking into the feasibility of a municipally owned utility. A lot of the arguments you've already heard. I think it will save Iowa City some money in electricity. I think it'll be beneficial for the community as a whole. I also want to point out that I think last Saturday a group called Public Power Initiative in Iowa City had a community forum that I think I only saw one of you at, but it's replayed over and over again on the government channel. I hope if you haven't had a chance to see that yet, you'll look into it, because they really make a lot of great points there. I just wanted to make a few of my own as well. I think by franchising through Mid-American, we support financially, because we have no other choice, everything that Mid-American stands for, all their policies, all their politics, and that's something as a community Iowa City may or may not want to do. If we can work toward a municipally owned utility, that the key thing there, in addition to financial savings, is we get to make the decisions. If we want to invest more in renewable sources, we can do that. If we want to invest in clean coal or whatever, we can do that. And I'm sure you'll probably hear, and obviously I'm in no position to evaluate the truth of it, but the Mid-American folks are gonna tell you why you should renew the franchise for another 15 years. And I think it's pretty obvious the only people that benefit from a long franchise agreement are Mid-American Energy and the shareholders. What's best for the folks of Iowa City is if we just do it as short as we possibly can, and from there we can take it into looking into a feasibility study. At that time, if we decide that there's no way Iowa City can have a municipally owned utility, we can always renew for another 15 years. But any sort of long-term renewal, even if it's 10 years, and I forget what the various proposals are, but I think there was a 5-year and a 10-year. I could be way off on that. Even a 5-year renewal ties our hands on this for 5 years, and we want to have the freedom to get our energy, especially in a time when deregulation at the state level is a consistent issue. Year after year it comes up. A backdoor deregulation effort came up at the state level earlier this year through HF 577 was the jargon. It was not very publicized, but what it would have done is deregulate any new power plants built. And obviously that, over time would have the same effect as deregulation, and we sure don't want to be in the position California was in earlier this year. So strongly encourage you to just renew for as short a period of time as the Mid-American folks are willing to do it for, and look into this, and we can always decide later if it's not feasible, go with Mid-American for a longer period of time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Robin Schrader from the Weber-Harlock Neighborhood Association. I appreciate your time. There are many of us here tonight. However, not everyone plans to speak to you, as I know you have a full agenda. So with that in mind, Mr. Mayor, I hope you'll indulge me with an additional minute if it becomes necessary. We've come before you a number of times with the same primary themes: density and all its related traffic and safety concerns, inconsistent zoning, and the subsequent stress that new development places on existing neighborhoods. I'm here for your consideration of a zoning request where timely action would be greatly appreciated. We've submitted an application to downzone a parcel of land on Benton Street, referred to as Benton Villa, from RM44 to RM20. Since we have spoken with most of you about this request, I will only briefly describe the project that's being proposed, which initiated our action. There are 2 buildings with 8 units each currently on the 1.3-acre piece of land. A new development seeks to replace these 16 units with 4 3-story buildings and a total of 80 units. These buildings would be directly adjacent to single-family homes on 2 sides and an 8-plex directly behind. The plans call for no significant buffer between these 3-story buildings and the adjacent residential neighborhood. In fact, they will decrease the existing buffer of open space that exists with the current apartment buildings and land use. We are requesting an RM20 zoning, which would encourage smaller scale buildings with appropriate buffer zones between the complex and adjacent homes. This is not a huge parcel of land, just 1.3 acres, and we're hoping for something in the range of 30 units to replace the existing 16. An RM20 zoning would also create less additional stress on Benton Street and all of the related concerns on down the hill. I realize that it is neither the developer nor the property owner's fault that this RM44 zone has been allowed to sit directly next to single-family homes. This is one more example of the inconsistencies and historical oversight plaguing our neighborhood, which I hope and trust will be resolved during the Southwest District planning process. I feel frustration and regret that the property owner and the developer are caught in the middle of our struggle to defend our neighborhood from a lack of comprehensive planning. There is great collective wisdom in front of me, and I doubt that any of you would believe it makes sense to bury single-family homes under 3-story apartment buildings within several feet. However, until the Southwest District planning process is complete, this is an instance where waiting for the process to be concluded would be too late. Once this acre of land is paved over and 3-story buildings erected, there is no opportunity to do something better or smarter for the neighborhood as a whole. Developers make substantial investments in their plans in our neighborhoods, yet so do families, and in an arguably more profound way. Maintaining neighborhoods that appeal to young families is ultimately the best protection of everyone's property values and protects the city's existing and future tax base. I'm asking that you set a public hearing for the next possible opportunity. This would allow public discussion and a decision prior to the issuance of a building permit for the project proposed. This would give everyone involved input into the appropriateness of the existing zoning in relation to the surrounding properties. We came before you a number of times about Southgate's development proposal for the Jensen Tract, which is within yards of the Benton Villa proposal. Our concerns remain consistent: overcrowding, traffic escalation, and a bizarre mix of zoning that places small homes in the shadows of huge complexes with no regard for open and green space. I've been gratified to see from reading the papers that the city is defending the formal council decision made with respect to the Southgate proposal. We are following that particular case very closely, as are other interested parties, since it has impact upon our rights to a supermajority provision under Iowa state law. Yet I want to be very clear that I, as much as any of you, deeply regret that our attempts to compromise in that case were unsuccessful and that the matter will end in court. This zoning application submitted yesterday is the first of several that our neighborhood is preparing in hopes of being proactive about our future. I have learned much from our interactions over the past months, and I have taken to heart the concept of appealing a zoning designation prior to development proposals. However, I'm not looking forward to shepherding several downzoning requests through city channels over the coming months, which seems an unfortunate use of effort, given that there is a comprehensive planning process about to begin. We respectfully request that you place a moratorium on large development projects in our area until the planning process has been completed and a plan adopted. The Benton Villa project is the only pending project affected by this request. The citizens of our area are anxious and enthusiastic about working with city staff and all of you to create a plan that allows our city to grow, increases our tax base, and does so with respect for existing neighborhoods and in harmony with the diverse mix of housing in our area. A moratorium on large-scale projects would allow the planning process to proceed with integrity and would be a proactive approach to solving the problems we have rather than perpetuating them. We will embrace the results of a plan that we are a part of creating and will welcome the changes it brings. Will you please set our downzoning application for timely public hearing and place a moratorium on large projects in our neighborhood pending the planning process? We are simply seeking a chance to openly discuss the options.
Are you looking at me?
Yes, I'm looking at you because, I mean, I do appreciate, I really appreciate approaching council with things like this. You're talking about other parts prior to somebody doing something. I mean, I really think that's being proactive, and I think that's the way to do it. As far as this particular request is concerned, what are the I mean, we can set a public hearing.
First, with respect to the Benton Villa project.
Yes, that's fine.
There's a pending application for downzoning. I
Okay.
think you can set a public hearing. You can't do it tonight, obviously, but because we have to give notice of that. But you can do it at a subsequent meeting, and upon the setting of the public hearing, there'll be a 60-day moratorium. With respect to the general, more broader moratorium that's being requested, we're going to have to take a look at that.
But the immediate one.
Certainly.
There has been a rezoning request filed.
Yes, as I
And we can
understand it,
then
yes.
set a public hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Has a building application permit been filed by the proposed developer?
I believe there's been a site plan review process that's ongoing.
And that means they could get that within 20 days if we don't.
There is a protest provision in the ordinance that would take that to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I believe that's something that the neighborhood is pursuing.
That is in the works. My understanding is that is a more technical process, that taking it to planning and zoning would simply be a delay, which we're willing to go to the exercise of doing that, and we have many of those signatures ready and available. My understanding that the downzoning process is a more legislative function and is really more guided by council action.
Yeah, the site plan review, there is a protest provision. It's an administrative technical review that if the sufficient number of protests are made, it is bumped up to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but the Planning and Zoning Commission's purview is the same as the housing official. They review it on the same standards, so it is not, it's a very different standard than a zoning decision that you all would make. So that's certainly not, the protest of the site plan is not a substitute for a setting of a public hearing and a moratorium.
Well, I guess my question is, assuming that we are in agreement that we'd like to set a public hearing, discuss this, and resolve the issue, there's no point in a public hearing if a building permit is issued prior to us having the hearing. Is that not correct?
The setting of a public hearing would stop construction if a building permit has not been issued, or if a building permit has been issued and there's no substantial progress made on it. But I think the idea would be to set the public hearing prior to the building permit being issued. And I think the timing that we've figured out is that that can happen. If you do that at your October 8th meeting, you should be okay.
That we're okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're in agreement to put that on the agenda then? To set the public hearing?
So on October 8th, we'll put an
Well,
item
yeah,
on your
the
agenda to
not
set
vote
the
on it,
public.
but I think that's,
I
just
thank you
want to
very
clarify
much.
it.
Thank you. Could I please give you these since you have a counselor missing?
do we have a motion to accept correspondence?
Second.
By Ross, seconded by Champion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, and on the second issue that Ms. Schrader raised, is that something that you want us to take a look at?
I think it would be a good idea.
I think preliminarily we should have, I don't, is that something we could get a short
I think that's something
opinion
that
on?
we
But I do
probably
think-
need to take a look at, just in
Okay.
terms, so we're not addressing these issues piecemeal in this neighborhood. So we'll take a look at it.
Okay, and could we have that, well, we would have that information by the time that we hold the public hearing, which would be a second meeting of October.
And
Is that
when
right?
is that planning process going to start?
We've been told it begins in fall.
It would-
Karen?
Karen? Yeah.
You have to be in the microphone.
The neighborhood meetings will be at the end of October, the beginning of November on the Southwest District Plan. When you're setting the public hearing on October 8th, it will be for a period of time that allows 60 days for review by the Planning and Zoning Commission, so we'll have to figure out exactly when that's going to be.
Does, we set the public hearing, that goes to Planning and Zoning Commission then?
That's right.
Before our hearing, by the time we have our hearing, we have a report from Planning and Zoning,
Yes,
a
you do.
recommendation? Okay,
Yes, you do.
fine,
And
fine.
you have to hold the public hearing and then act within the moratorium period.
Right, but the public hearing will be held after a recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission, so this is going to get the full treatment.
Right.
We have to run through the whole process
Right.
within that 60
Okay,
days.
that's fine.
Hey.
Hello, my name is Kevin Perez. I live at 161 Columbia Drive. You guys, there's number 13 on the agenda tonight is about the parcel of land.
If that's on the agenda, that's
But it's,
fine.
it doesn't seem, it seems to be mildly different. I just have a few questions about, I want everybody to know where the money goes. You know, you sell a piece of property and it's $1.7 million is the appraised value.
We will discuss that when it comes up on the agenda.
That will be discussed?
Yes, and you'll be welcome to speak at that point.
Okay.
Okay?
Because it does, I mean, it doesn't read that way, it just,
No, but anything associated with that.
Anything associated.
Any connection you want to make, you're welcome.
okay, all right, I will talk then, thank you.
Other public discussion? Item 5 are planning and zoning matters. A, consider a motion setting a public hearing for October 8th on an ordinance to rezone approximately 14.07 acres of property from low-density single-family residential, RS5, and planned development overlay, low-density single-family residential, OPDH5, to OPDH5 for property located south of Village Road and north of Wintergreen Drive.
Set the public hearing.
By Champion. Second. Seconded by O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider an ordinance amending the zoning code Article O, sign regulations to permit canopy roof signs. This is first consideration.
Move first consideration.
Second.
Moved by O'Donnell, seconded by Champion. Discussion. Roll call.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Champion?
Yes.
Tanner?
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item C, consider an ordinance to rezone approximately 30.11 acres of property from rural residential, RR1, to sensitive areas overlay, low-density, single-family residential, OS5, located at the west end of Bristol Drive. This is second consideration.
Move second consideration.
Moved by Vanderoff, seconded by O'Donnell. Discussion? Roll call.
Wilburn.
Yes.
Champion.
Yes.
Tanner.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
O'Donnell.
Yes.
Vanderhoff.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item D, consider an ordinance to rezone approximately 38.24 acres from low-density, single-family RS5, county highway commercial, CH, county local government, CI, or C1, and county multifamily, R3A, to community commercial, CC2, 10.99 acres, medium-density, single-family, RS8, 21 acres, and low-density, single-family, RS5, 6.22 acres, for property located east of Scott Boulevard and south of Rochester Avenue and Lower West Branch Road. We've been asked to defer this indefinitely. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Champion, seconded by Vanderoff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, consider an ordinance rezoning approximately 105.2 acres of property from suburban residential, county RS, to low-density, single-family RS5, 45.08 acres, and medium-density, single-family RS8, 60.13 acres, for property located north of Court Street, south of Lower West Branch Road, and east of Hummingbird Lane. And we've also been asked to defer this one indefinitely.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vanderoff, seconded by O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, consider a resolution approving the final plat of a re-subdivision of Lot 236, Washington Park Addition, Part 11, Arbor Hill, an 8.02 acre, two-lot residential subdivision located north of Washington Street, east of Green Mountain Drive. We've been asked to defer this one to October 8th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vanderoff, seconded by Wilburn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
Mr. Mayor, Andy Chappell from the County Attorney's Office is not going to arrive until 8, and so we'd ask that you move this to later in the agenda.
Do we need a motion do we have a motion to, how do I,
To amend the agenda.
well, I want to amend the agenda by letting number 6 float until the county attorney is
That'll work.
here. Is there a motion to that effect?
I just did.
Moved by Vanderoff.
second that.
Seconded by O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7 is a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement for private redevelopment by and between the City of Iowa City and Owens Brockway Plastic Products Incorporated. We have been asked to, this is a public hearing which we will not open, we've been asked to have a motion setting a public hearing for October 8th.
So moved. Second.
Moved by O'Donnell, seconded by Wilburn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8 is a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement for private redevelopment by and between the City of Iowa City and Seabury and Smith Incorporated and Southgate Development Incorporated. Again, this is a public hearing which will not be open tonight. I would like a motion setting a public hearing for October 8th.
Reset the hearing for October 8th.
Moved by Champion.
Second.
Seconded by Vanderoff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9 is public discussion on a resolution approving the 2001-2002 Deer Management Plan. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the recommendation from the Deer Management Committee?
If there's nobody else, I would.
Okay, because you're just in time.
Okay, my name is Lori Van Allen, and I've been here several times on the same issue, and I don't want to miss passing up this issue again. I kind of would like to forget about it and let it pass and not to even bring it up, but I don't want to do that. And I want to start with something I've written. Striking, even alarming, is the amount of urban sprawl Iowa City has seen in recent years. Former farm and woodland are now mushrooming housing tracts and new highways. Caught in this encroachment are the hapless deer, once living on the edge of town, now finding themselves in someone's backyard. With no end in sight to the further expansion of the city, I see no end to the clash with deer. Will we be so short-sighted and so money-hungry that we fail to establish green corridors that allow the deer their space? Or will the pattern of deer hunting simply shift according to the demands of development? Will the killing of deer that was a short-term solution become a yearly enterprise? Already it seems with the opening of the gate to hunters of all skill levels and from the general public, the line has been crossed and killing deer for sport is fast becoming the latest hobby. Despite the bantering back and forth about a humane death, as in the quick shot to the head humane, how humane is it, I ask, to bait and kill deer in the harshest season of the year? How humane is it to slaughter wholesale the families of does and their young, with the, as experts explained, the mother being shot first and the young being shot as they return to their mother? And I wanted to say just extemporaneously, after this 2 weeks of violence that we've all experienced and the extremeness of it, that I'm hoping that it will bring light upon how prevalent violence is in the society, and that how it starts with the young and those without voices to talk back or to speak up for themselves, that it starts with the lowest level, the most helpless and without power, and goes up, violence towards women, violence towards the elderly. I think there's a continuum there that one of these days will be understood better. I think it's understood now that there's a lot of violence on TV that affects the unstable in our society. And I think it's a responsibility of people to look at how violence is sanctioned in our city governments and just exactly where it's all going. And to say no to guns and violence, and yes to other solutions. Thank you.
Lori?
Yeah.
Could you comment on some other possible solutions that you don't see in the deer plan?
Well, I think that they have been brought up. I think, they really need some concerted effort. I'm not familiar with this particular session and how that went. I know that there was some positive talk about others alternatives, and that they got to a certain point and then they were, as they did last year, were cut off, and the plan that's been in, the solution for the last few years became the plan. And I think it's been proven that birth control methods do work. And that, to me, seems like that would be one solution. It would take perhaps a few years to get the desired results, but I personally think just kind of getting them away from where they cause the most problem would not be a difficult job. I think putting food where they are away from housing developments, and possibly even using those bait sites as places to administer the birth control would be a solution. And there's just quite a few other things to think about. There's also the problem of why is it a problem? It's a problem because there is so much development. And I see it's just pretty clear that the shooting is following the patterns of development, and will continue to do so. It'll be over here next year and over there next year, and okay?
Thanks.
Other discussion?
We have a
Aye.
motion to accept correspondence.
So moved.
Moved by Vanderoff, seconded by O'Donnell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10 are plans, specifications, form of contract, estimate of cost for the construction of the Hickory Hill Park Trail project, establishing amount of bid security to accompany each bid, directing city clerk to publish advertisement for bids, and fixing time and place for the receipt of bids. This is a public hearing. The public hearing is open.
Good evening, Council. My name is Lori Bears. I live at 402 South Gilbert Street, and I've got a testimony. Hello, my name is Lori Bears, and I am here to speak for the Johnson County Coalition for Persons with Disabilities. And on behalf of the coalition, I'm here to ask you to approve the Hickory Hill Park plans and specifications. We are completely behind this project. We are very excited about the plans for Hickory Hill as they now stand. We would like to thank the City Council, Dunbar Jones, and the Iowa City Parks and Recreation Commission, and the department for allowing us to participate so fully at every stage of the project. Hickory Hill Park is an excellent example of how city government and community groups can work together to make parks both accessible and beautiful. We would like to thank Terry Trueblood from the Iowa City Parks and Recreation Department, Tom Dunbar and Mike Steinman from Dunbar Jones Partnership, Dave Purdy and the Friends of Hickory Hill, and Lynn Sandler and all the interns from the Iowa Law School's legal clinic for making the process so effective and productive. The coalition pledges its continued support and participation. Again, the coalition asks this city council to approve the Hickory Hill Park plans and specifications tonight, and we hope to see you and other modern-day trailblazers next July in Hickory Hill Park to celebrate the 12th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. You know, for the public's information, this is a project that was involved a tremendous amount of cooperation between the Johnson County Coalition for Persons with Disabilities and the Friends of Hickory Hill Park. And the result is a project that, from my understanding, has the unqualified endorsement of both groups. And Terry, I think you are to be commended for working this out and for everyone's satisfaction, something I think we can be proud of.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, but it certainly wasn't me alone. I did want to just take this opportunity to let you know that because there were several concerns expressed at your meeting of 2 weeks ago, as I indicated last night, we did meet with the bulk of the committee that's been involved with the planning of this for well over a year. And basically those concerns expressed turned out to be some misunderstanding and some confusion. And everything was ironed out after we met. They indicated that they understood why we had to do certain things the way that we specified them, and everybody is on board now. And I would also like to just take this opportunity to say that, as you know, or I think you know, I was out of town at the last meeting, but if I would have had any idea whatsoever that there was any concerns over these plans and specifications, I would have been here, or I would have had somebody here in my place.
While you're there, Terry, could you tell me how the pre-bid meeting went?
You know, we did have pre-bid. We went ahead with that as scheduled, and we had 4 prospective bidders attend that. The pre-bid meeting lasted something like 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is very long for a pre-bid meeting because they had a lot of questions.
After that, our consultant, Mike Steinman, who's here this evening, went out to the park in the rain. Fortunately, I had other commitments, so I didn't have to walk around. You know, I might melt out there anyway. But anyway, they went out there and walked around for about 3 hours just to make sure that they had a good, clear picture of what the terrain is like and what the project is all about. As I said, they did have a lot of questions. I would say a fair amount of anxiety. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but it's a project that is a bit different because there are many restrictions placed on the contractor, particularly with regard to protection of trees and a narrow construction workspace corridor. So anyway, we're just keeping our fingers crossed that we will get some viable bids and go from there. You may have heard that we did not or will not be receiving the grant that we applied for the road oil substance. But we recognized up front that we could still do the project without that would be an addition to the project and not something that we were counting on for the project to be successful. So we do plan on going ahead.
Could you reapply next year for that grant?
Well, we could, but it would be too late if the project goes forward because the road oil substance is something that has to be incorporated into the crushed limestone as it's installed. It's not something that you spray on it after it's already there.
Okay. You mentioned the protection of trees, and at our last meeting, there was a statement made at the podium about careless removal of trees during the cemetery project, and I was under the impression that we hadn't taken out any significant trees. Could you clarify that for the public, please?
Certainly. Yes. Some of you may recall that we really made no pretense before that project that we would be able to save a lot of trees. Matter of fact, I think the most positive statement we were able to make is that if there were any really unique or significant trees, we would make every effort to save those. And if there were other trees that were, weren't all that unique, but were good trees, we would make an effort to save those as well. We had our forestry crew go through that entire section and evaluate all the trees. And there were no unique or large or significant trees to be saved. There were, I think they said about 6 or 8 that were borderline. We did not save any trees. And we knew going in, as I said, that we might not be able to save any trees. It was a question of, do you save a borderline tree and sacrifice maybe 8 burial spaces to do so? And the goal of that project was to get as many burial spaces as we could in that small area. So that's what we went forth with, yeah. But no, there were no trees marked to be saved, none whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else wish to speak at the hearing? Public hearing is closed. Do we have a resolution approving?
So moved, gladly.
Moved by O'Donnell, seconded by Vanderoff. Any council discussion? Roll call.
Champion?
Yes.
Canner?
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 11, consider a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign and city clerk to attest an extension of the listing agreement between the City of Iowa City and Leppick Krager Realtors of Iowa City, Iowa, for the commercial units remaining to be sold at Tower Place and Parking.
Move adoption of the resolution.
Second.
By Wilburn, seconded by O'Donnell. Discussion? I have one question, Steve. We've had some, I think, very good success in marketing these condominiums. What do we have left? I mean, most of this...
Shows in the audience 7 units, 5 have been sold at full price.
Yeah, so I mean, our...
Right, Joe? 8 units.
Well, anyway, I think that has been more successful than I thought it would be when we started. Council discussion on the resolution? Roll call.
Canner?
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Champion?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 12, consider a resolution approving the allocation of public art funds and authorizing the mayor to sign and city clerk to attest an agreement between the city of Iowa City, the owner, and the current tenant, 2 South Dubuque Street, for a mural along the Iowa Avenue side of 2 South Dubuque Street.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Champion,
And second.
seconded by Wilbur. Discussion.
Connie, have you figured out what it's going to be? I've gone by there.
I didn't have time to go by today, but, no, I'm not too sure what it's going to be, but it's coming along.
It looks colorful.
It does, it's colorful.
You know, if it has even a portion of the interest that the Black Hawk Mini Park had with that mural that was there for so many years, it will be a tremendous success. I don't know how many years that was there, Steve. You? Downtown Association painted that probably before you even got here.
You've been here a whole lot longer than I have.
That's true.
Been here a whole lot
But it
longer
really,
than a lot of
everybody
really,
has.
it was a very, in fact, that's where the Black Hawk Mini Park got its name.
That's
was
right.
Black Hawk painted on the side of that building, which was pretty amazing. So I think this would be really neat for downtown.
I think, I'd just like to point out that Sandy, who owns Dulcinea, has been very enthused about this project, and this is the kind of typical of business owners downtown who take a real active interest in the downtown, and he's very excited about Iowa Avenue, and she wanted to contribute to that, and I thank her for doing it.
I want to mention that Dee and I were at the, along with Ross too, but we were at a workshop at the State League of Cities, and we went to a workshop on public art, and the people there were real exciting, and I was especially impressed with a woman who coordinates some public art projects for the Quad Cities, and some of the grassroots art projects. I think things that are like the mural, and the more that we can encourage that kind of thing, the more exciting it will be for the city as a whole to have that color and that energy happening. And I think this money is well spent, and hopefully we can duplicate in other areas.
Okay, roll call.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Coburn?
Yes.
Champion?
Yes.
Canner?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes. Motion carries. Item number 13 is consider a resolution selecting a preferred developer for the redevelopment of urban renewal parcel 641A.
Move to defer.
Well, I would like, it's on the agenda, and I would like to invite the public to comment on this. We will be deferring this tonight for
Let's
2
get the-
weeks.
Well, we
Let's
need
get
a
the
move.
motion on
Okay,
the
we have a motion to defer from Mr. Canada.
Next,
8.
October 8th.
Second.
Moved by Cantor, seconded by Champion. Discussion, public discussion.
Hello, Council. Dawn Mueller. I just wanted to ask the Council if you could keep in mind, I have a background in physics and I'm very interested in astronomy. I'm a little concerned, having seen the concept plan for the proposal last night, the potential for any light pollution to impact the observatory on top of Van Allen Hall. Therefore, I would like to request that Council and any other committee that might take a look at this to consider the impact of light pollution on the observatory, and to contact some of the astronomers there to get from their perspective how they feel the impact would be. There are a couple of astronomers I would recommend, Bob Mutel and Stephen Spangler at the physics department. If anybody is interested in seeing what the view is like from top of Van Allen Hall, I would be more than happy to give you a tour up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
From the observatory, can you still see significant astronomical objects?
It's well used by the faculty to teach students. There is a robotic refractor telescope up there, which is used quite frequently for not only the public is invited to come up to view, but also the students do projects utilizing the data there, and therefore it's very, very critical to the astronomy teaching program for us to try to monitor the light pollution in town. The installation of the lighting fixtures on Lynn Avenue and some of the other
lighting around town, while it is very ornamental and very pretty, from an astronomer's point of view, it can be very debilitating. And as somebody who has taught a number of children the wonders of the sky and who has managed an observatory before, it's very nice that in Iowa City we have a pretty good view of the sky considering the amount of development that we have here, and I'd really like to do what we can to preserve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of lights, I had heard there were supposed to be shields of some sort put on some of the Dubuque Street lights after the streetscape. Is there anything to that?
I don't think so.
Someone had mentioned something about that.
We had, last time we had a shield-related lighting issue was on College Green Park. That was a number of years ago. I don't recall that, Steve.
There was,
No.
Hi, my name's Kevin Perez. When I've been reading this and I watched the 4 proposals on the Access Channel, and I'm assuming that the committee's already made their decision. The problem I'm having is the fact that, well, first of all, the $1.7 million the property is appraised at, when you sell that property, and I talked to Karen Franklin today, and she told me that that money goes into an account goes to benefit low and moderate income families and make resources available to them. And that's where that $1.7 million would go to if it was sold for the appraised value. And I mean, obviously tonight you can see some of that money could go for trails, for public transportation, could go for a lot of different things. Of the proposals that I think that they're down to 2 that they're probably going to choose from, one is offered 0 and the other one is offered $250,000. And I think in projects that are worth $25 million, I don't think that I don't feel that they should get such a good deal. I mean, the property is obviously a great piece of property. It's worth $1.7 million because that's what it's appraised at. I think that would be, it looks kind of suspicious when someone buys a piece of property for $250,000 and it's worth $1.7 million. And that money would go to benefit the city. So I just want to get some comment about that. And I know you guys talked about it. And I talked at length with Karen Franklin today about where the money goes. And I just, you know, $1.7 million is what, 7% of a $25 million project, and it goes directly to the residents of the city. And you can make great improvements in the city. That's a lot of money.
One of the questions the council will have to answer, and I think that you bring up a good point. One of the 4 proposals offers, I believe, $1.7 million and a $12 million building, which will produce tax revenue in less than 50% of 2 of the proposals that are made. So I think it becomes a matter of prudence, at least for me as a council person.
Right, and I understand that argument. Okay. But why wouldn't you say, okay, here's your $25 million project. The price of that property is $1.7 million. I mean, you've already had Lepic Kreger selling property for you, right? I mean, they're doing it. I mean, as we just talked about earlier, and you talked about getting full price. Well, I mean, why would you only take $250,000 for $1.7 million property? It doesn't make sense, because it feels like you're taking money from the citizens, you know, because that's exactly who it would benefit.
And we could do the $12 million project and get the 1.7.
And I think that should be part of the sale price. I mean, the sale price, just having it up in the air doesn't make any sense to me. You know, we have this for sale, but we don't know how, you know, we don't have a price tag available. If you're going to develop the property, the price of $1.7 million or close to it should be a part of that agreement.
And actually, Ernie, one thing we could do is we could ask for $1.7 million and then put that back into the apartments and possible condos and make that low income, make available some low income. We could put CDBG money.
It's already earmarked according to the urban renewal where it has to go, and it has to go to low and moderate income, which is, I believe, is $62,000 is the moderate income.
But what I'm saying is we could subsidize. What we do is we use that money for other projects, for profit or nonprofit, to have built housing that will house low and moderate income.
$1.7 million is a lot of money. It could be used for a lot of different things. And that's my whole point, is the fact that we should probably look at that the sale price should be a lot closer to the appraised value.
Kevin, I'm sure, and Stephen, I'm sure that's going to be part of our discussion on the
What
8th.
Stephen is indicating is not out of the question.
Right.
Remember, in 1969, when the property was under urban renewal, federal government provides the money, the land is purchased, it's written down, development occurs, and at the time you sell the property, where we are now, you have a choice of selling it, and those monies go into the CDBG account, and/or you can use it, the value of that land, for some alternate public improvement. And that's where it's a very broad definition for you all to decide on.
Well, and those options we need to talk about.
And
on the
that's,
8th.
I'm sure, subject to negotiations with the developer you ultimately select.
But 1.7 million goes farther than 250,000.
Any way
Right?
you want to cut it. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Good evening, Chuck Goldberg, 3146 Hastings Avenue. I've been asked this evening by the ownership of the Sheraton Hotel to speak and let everybody here know our position on this project. While we've committed to all of the developers to work very, very closely with them if their projects were to be chosen, Merstar Hotels and Resorts has thrown their support to the Moen Group in the concept that they have for the city. The meeting space will allow us to not only move the city forward, bringing in additional revenues to the city and increasing hotel motel tax, but bringing in those groups that we cannot bring in at this point. There are a lot of projects in the mix right now that I believe we need to look at, one of which is the project going on directly across the river from us in Coralville. I think that needs to be largely considered as a hotel bringing in 200 rooms, I believe, at this point, to the competitive set of the city. Adding additional hotel rooms directly on the other side of that, in our opinion, Merstar Hotels and Resorts, the ownership of the property, is not going to allow Iowa City to increase their hotel motel tax. We believe it'll actually have a detrimental effect to it. We believe that it will allow us to compete for the larger meetings. You had talked about League of Cities, I believe, last night. Those meetings are out there. There's no doubt about that. And there's no doubt that they would choose to come to this city. But are there enough of them out there to support the project of an entirely new hotel and meeting space next to an existing hotel? We've looked at it. We don't believe that that's the case. We believe that we can utilize, in conjunction with the Moen Group, the meeting room space that they've proposed to step the city up to the next level and increase all the revenues all around. Again, I was asked to present this to you and give your opinion. We believe that the proposal has stability to the downtown development, brings in a base of people that would live in the downtown area above and beyond student level, which makes us very happy. We'd like to see a more mature audience move in down there, and we believe the amenities that come along with that proposal would add to the downtown and to the level that we'd like to see downtown brought to. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Good evening. My name is Mark Moen. I'm one of the proposed developers for the 6401A parcel. I live at 210 South Clinton Street, above the Mondo's Restaurant downtown in Iowa City. I can't tell you what a thrill it is to be here. I came to Iowa City in 1976 as a student and never would have dreamed I would be standing before the council proposing a $25 million project for the city. And it's been an amazing ride. We approached the city over a year ago about 6401A and have been working on that project ever since. We got a favorable response from the city that the city would be interested in entertaining proposals for that site. We're here a year later and about $50,000 in expenses later. That $50,000 went to provide you and the committee, the selection committee, with as detailed a plan as we could possibly provide you at this stage. Not only renderings of the building, but floor plans of the interior and specific uses that we'll make of that building. There were some issues raised last night, and I think some excellent questions questions that I would have if I were sitting on the council, and I wanted to try and address some of those or just comment on them tonight briefly. First of all, the issue of the hotel motel tax. I presented to Karen Franklin today a letter that details our position on that, and I'm not going to try and get into all the figures of that now and the percentages and the room rates and all of that, but what you need to consider, I think, or what the committee will need to consider is one thing is the room rates. Our hotel has 57 suites. These are large, 525 square foot suites, two-room suites. And the rental rate on those suites is significantly higher than the rate on the standard fare hotel room. So it's not 57 rooms versus 144 rooms in the two projects. And you'll see the details of this, I think, when the committee presents it to you. But we would weight those rooms at about 1.5 based on the rentals for those rooms as opposed to the standard rooms. So if a standard room rents for $100 a night, the suite would rent for $150.
Does it take into account occupancy rates? I would assume the larger one is perhaps has a slightly smaller occupancy rate.
Well, we don't think so. I mean, we think from the analysis that we've done and from our conversations with other hotel operators, independent operators, and from our conversations with Sheraton, we're filling a niche that doesn't exist in Iowa City. There is no upscale of this caliber. In fact, there's no hotel in the Midwest, short of Chicago, that would meet the caliber of the hotel that we're proposing. So I think it would be a real destination point in addition to just supplying additional rooms. I mean, we have something very specific in mind as to what we're going to do with this hotel if we get the project. And it's something very special. I mean, something that we don't have and no one around here has. When you look at the occupancy rate to determine what the effect is on the motel-hotel tax, you have to combine both the Sheraton existing rooms with the facility that would be put on 64-1A. So under our proposal, you'll have 291 rooms total. Under the Executive Hotel Group's proposal, you'll have 378 rooms total. When you factor in the higher revenue per room for the suites, both hotels, and again, you're going to have to see this in writing, I think, and get the specifics of it, but when you're comparing that, they would have to run at 85% occupancy, both hotels, both the Executive Hotel Group's proposal and the Sheraton, to produce the same revenue that we would produce if our hotel were full and the Sheraton hotel were occupied. So they have to get, I'm not explaining it very well, but they would have to get to 85% occupancy, both of those, before you would realize any additional hotel-motel tax. And it's seldom that they would be at 85% occupancy. That is, in addition, offset by the fact that when you're running at less than 85% occupancy, since our rooms will rent for more than the standard fare, there'll be more revenue generated during those times, and there's an offset. It's increased revenue, which is increased hotel-motel tax, which offsets some of that additional hotel-motel tax that you might conceivably receive if the larger hotel were built. We've had a lot of discussion among our own group, with experts, with consultants in Des Moines, with the Sheraton Group about the optimal number of rooms, given the environment in Iowa City, what's available at the Sheraton, all of those factors. And that's how we came up with the number of rooms that we did. It wasn't just pulled out of a hat. And again, these are luxury hotel suites, unlike anything else in the Midwest. And these are designed to complement and not compete directly with the Sheraton. Again, it's something that the Sheraton doesn't offer and no one else in town offers. As a resident of Iowa City and a property owner of downtown property, I want to make sure that we do nothing to take business away from the Sheraton. And our feeling, and we've had this confirmed by others that we've consulted with, is that a full-size hotel, as opposed to a small luxury hotel that we're proposing, would take business away from the Sheraton. Our goal is to work with the Sheraton and to enhance that property. And they've committed to work with us to enhance our property. And we think it's a great marriage. It's also, our project has been designed to, and the uses have been designed to enhance the traffic to existing businesses in the downtown area, such as restaurants and retail establishments. Initially, we considered a restaurant in this facility, and we decided against that after determining the number of quality restaurants in a 4-block area around the pedestrian plaza. We also have talked to the Sheraton, and they have plenty of facility, plenty of physical plant to service not only their hotel, but our 57 hotel suites, and also the convention and conference facility that we're proposing as part of this project. They have 2 kitchens on 2 different levels. They have all the facilities they need to service both of those enterprises. And in fact, our building was actually designed and placed on the lot to complement the Sheraton and to avoid interrupting any of the views from their rooms. And that's the reason it was set on the lot the way it was. And that's the reason the building is designed at an angle, to make sure that we're not interfering with any of those views. Another aspect that I want you to be aware of is that if the hotel requirements are greater than we anticipate, on level 7 through 11 of our building, those can easily be converted to hotel uses. Now, if we convert those to hotel suites, that would be 19 per floor. If we did it to smaller rooms, it would be even more than that. But those are easily converted to hotel space. It could be done, if we know that that need is there immediately, we could do it immediately. If it's 10 years down the road, we could do it 10 years down the road. Our belief is that it is a wiser way to develop this property to start, first of all, filling a niche that isn't filled with luxury hotel suites, and secondly, to allow for expansion rather than plunk down a large hotel next to an existing hotel.
Mark, you're going to need to kind of, unless we get questions, kind of wrap it up so we don't go too much longer.
Okay. Just a couple other things. The grocery store idea has been extremely well received. I've had enormous support on that. I think that points out the benefit to a local person doing the development on this site, because I think only a local person feels the pulse of this city. And I can tell you that we are absolutely committed to a grocery store, and that it can be put into the development agreement, and we will sign it with no hesitation. I've also provided Karen with some information on the energy proposals that we're contemplating. And just one other note, the $250,000 that was offered, I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding on this, is upfront money with our commitment to negotiate with the city on whatever additional costs are reasonable for that development right and the land. Our preference is to pay that over a 10-year period, but we certainly don't expect to buy that land for $250,000. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm Kevin Boyd. I live at 2216 North Dodge, and I'm just going to make a couple quick comments. I went to all 4 proposals at the library. I thought it was a really nice way of getting citizen involvement and input, and I was pleased to find out that the Mohans had gotten preferred developer status, at least recommended by the staff. I just wanted to also, since there was some discussion last night about considering another option, I think it's important that we consider the local developers first, and I think it's if you're looking at the 2 projects, the Executive Hotel and the Mohan project, my support is for the Mohan project because it is local. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name's Tom Summey. I live at 2505 Rochester Avenue, Iowa City. It's kind of irrelevant how long one's lived here in town, I think, for this particular purpose. The primary goal of Iowa City in Block 64-1A is to ensure the economic viability of the Central Business District. It was set forth on the Urban Renewal Plan many, many years ago, and it's still true today. The development of the proposal that the Executive Hotel Group submitted is complementary to the Iowa City streetscape and also complementary to the proposed new library that would be adjacent to it. The Executive Hotel Group proposes a project of $25 to $30 million in the form of a 10-story building, 144 rooms, with valet parking to be available to the nearby city garages, of which there would be 4 at that time, 60 private residential condominiums, and 20,000 to 25,000 of convention space, and that would include a 600-seat ballroom. And there would also, of course, be related breakout rooms, and those would be on the 1st and 2nd floor. Addition to an upscale restaurant that would provide a complimentary pleasure of staying for those staying in the hotel, as well as having a new dining experience for the people within this region. This makeup would truly make it an upscale property. We know from previous experience that when you bring a project of this size into the central business district, the little competition also is good as a major catalyst to grow retail business in any area. That's the whole concept of shopping centers, good or bad, whether you favor them, but competition together is good. It brings more people into the marketplace. 60 condominium units would have at least 1 underground parking space per unit, thereby ensuring the marketability of the units. All the units would be a minimum of 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and would have a variety of amenities available to ones in terms of housing and furnishings, maid service, and room service. It is in our plan that if the owner of an unoccupied condominium would like to rent that, the hotel would assume that responsibility, providing those services as requested. And in addition, as you know, a condominium of that nature is also covered under the lodging tax. Block 64A is the last piece of the urban renewal puzzle, a project which was to serve and anchor as a magnet to the visitors of Iowa City for years to come. We submit, and we'll also do this later, a vita of the architect, Bob Ziegelman, and it'll highlight his firm's experience as a merit architect for the state of Michigan. In the 4 proposals before the council, only the Executive Hotel Group had developed a proposal of this size and scope and importance, and of course this is all based upon what our consultant told us was feasible. They came to town, they spent 4 days here talking to university officials and the Convention Bureau, the Sheraton Hotel people, business people on the street, and people who are buyer of convention space. And then based upon that, made a recommendation to us, and a copy of that will be submitted to you. The Executive Hotel Company is experienced hotel operators. This is not our first time with this type of situation, and it's been done in a very competitive market, which is the core of downtown Detroit. I guess the saying goes, there's no substitute for a little experience. As we submitted previously, the primary goal is the economic success of downtown. We urge the council to make their selection upon a quantitative economic viability rather than on a public policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Like the other development proposal, you're asking for TIF financing, but you didn't offer a price. Do you have a price that you're offering at this time?
$250,000
$250?
for the what's called development rights and TIF financing. That'll even the playing ground a little bit for you.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Another comment that I wanted to express to council. Last night, it was of a little bit of concern of what sort of grocery store would go in, and Councilor Vanderhoff made a comment which I thought was very important, is that she was interested in having some sort of flag store in there, such as a Hy-Vee or an Eagle, which would have definite longevity, so that the store would not fail and then turn over into something else perhaps which downtown would not want. speaking to the issue of competition, I felt a little concerned when you brought up the name Hy-Vee. I'm starting to feel as if in Iowa City I am being surrounded by Hy-Vee, and I would love to offer them some competition. Also, with respect to competitiveness with New Pioneer Co-op, I don't know, again, what sort of grocery stores would go in there, but I also wouldn't want to undermine the business of the co-op. I enjoy it very much. If there's a need for a particular type of store downtown, a grocery store, one thing I think that needs to be kept into consideration is a number of people in the downtown community who live downtown don't have vehicles and are desirous of a grocery store to which they can walk. These tend to be students quite a bit. And I would encourage folks to think about possibly putting in a type of grocery store which would be affordable to the student population. That may conflict with the idea of an executive hotel, which sounds more upscale to me, but I just wanted to remind of some of the needs of the community. Just one quick other comment. As long as the developer, Mr. Moen, is here, I would also like to extend my invitation to give a tour of the top of Van Allen Hall and the observatories there to the developers so that we can address any engineering concerns. One of my concerns with the design of the Moen proposal is that with the steel and glass exterior of the building, there's the potential for beaming light in that direction, given the orientation of the building. I'm concerned about that. And also, in addition to the optical telescope on top of the building, there's also a radio telescope. And the possibility for signals reflecting off of that building back to the radio dish is also one that needs to be kept into consideration. Thank you.
Where's Gary Seaman when you need him?
We'll find him on Friday afternoon. Well, I would like to go ahead and vote on the motion to defer. Obviously, this discussion will continue on the 8th, which is when hopefully we will be discussing this. Stephen?
I have the same concern as Kevin Perez about the asking price, and it appears that we would probably pick one finalist and then negotiate. And I would ask the council to consider that we come from a position of strength and we negotiate with the two finalists before we pick one. That way I think we can get a higher price. And so that's something I think we need to consider. I would ask the council to consider at our next work session when we might talk about this. Okay. And along those lines, what are the open meeting laws, Eleanor, in regards to negotiating these prices? Is this something that can be done, has to be done in open, or if council's involved, can it be done in closed session?
The same rules apply. If council, I mean, if 4 or more members of council are negotiating the contract, that would be subject to the open meetings law. If staff is negotiating it, or if less than 4 members of council are negotiating it, then it likely would not.
So if we were to negotiate with 2 at once and say, give us your best offer, our staff would do that, and they come back to us and say, this is what's being offered, do we have to do that in an open meeting?
Again, it depends on who is doing the negotiations. If council is doing the negotiations.
No, staff, let me repeat that again, Eleanor. Staff is negotiating with both proposals.
There would be no open meetings required.
And they come back to council and say, this is what we have from the 2. Do we have to meet an open meeting, or is it something that...
If there's a report being made to council about the negotiations, that would be done in open session. Does that answer your question?
Not completely, but...
The concept, Stephen, is that if there's a governing body involved, you all, not staff or a couple of you, then the open meetings law comes into play.
So when we do acquisition of property, we can go into closed session for that?
you can.
But this is the opposite of that.
You would-
Selling property does not merit closed session.
Selling property does not.
Well, it's an RFP. I mean, it's a public proposal. So I suspect that negotiations that would necessarily have to be public. It doesn't say that staff can't negotiate with the two folks we're talking to and come back to us next Monday, or a week from Monday, and give us the results of their negotiation, but that's a public meeting.
For example, the water plant property that we have for sale and that we're looking at selling to the university, there were discussions at the staff level between the university and city staff, which were not done at open meetings. When the report was made to you about what the university's offer was, that was done in open session.
I'm just trying to figure out what's the way to get the best money for the land, the most money for the land.
Well, I suspect that if we chose, as a council, to set a policy of we would take no less than, we could give that instruction to our staff. That's always an open possibility for us.
Remember, too, that you're not, if you choose a preferred developer and then enter into negotiations, you are not committed, and you don't get what you want during the course of those negotiations. There's nothing binding you to.
I think that's a really good point, because I think that most of us are, and I guess I would consider myself the same. I'm kind of in this mode that we're going to select one of these and that's a done deal. And that really isn't true. This is an RFP. And after we select the preferred developer, if there is any amount of negotiation that we can do, at any time that if we're satisfied the project moves along, if we are not satisfied or we don't feel that's right, then there's nothing that says we have to do anything. And I tend not to think about that, but that's exactly right, Eleanor. Once the preferred developer is selected, then there may be some pretty serious negotiations.
And that's a point to start those negotiations, because I'd like to point out that when, although at the time I was the only one who didn't want to put anything on the lot, when the criteria for the RFP were developed, we didn't rank those criteria and say that the number one criteria is the amount of money that we can get for the property. While I'd like to see, us get as much as we can. But, again, I think once a developer is selected, again, you're looking at negotiating again.
And also, I don't think we should hone in on the land itself, although we will certainly be paid for it. We're looking at a whole concept that we want downtown. And so we're not looking to sell the land. We could have put that land on the market and sold it, I'm sure. But we didn't, that's not how we chose to sell it. We wanted a concept there, something we were after.
I think there's a combination. There's a concept there, but there's also a return on our investment. And our investment has been sitting there as a parking lot for a long time. And now...
But that's nobody's fault but our own.
That's right. And
now developers for that.
Now that's part of the negotiation, is to look and see what we get back in taxes and so forth that may offset the selling price.
Right, that's what the whole concept is about.
And I feel comfortable doing that, because if this benefits the community to the point that we increase our tax base and bring in more dollars to our general fund, then it makes us capable to do other projects that include all these other things. And it certainly falls into the purview of CDBG monies to do this as a community project.
I think just another analogy that might help you, Stephen, is that it's my position it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to negotiate with two different entities at the same time, playing them off against each other. This is analogous to what we do with consultants, where we choose based on their qualifications, and then we negotiate a price with them, as opposed to a competitive bidding situation where you have some very concrete parameters that you're looking at, price being the major one, and you seek closed bids, and whichever price comes in the lowest, if we're dealing with a public improvement project, or the highest if we're dealing with bonding, then you choose that. But that's really not the kind of situation that we have here.
Well, actually, the X factor here, for the most, we have everything laid out for the most part, except for the selling price of the land. So it isn't that, I don't see the complications there, Eleanor. It seems pretty easy to say, this is what you're offering, this is what you're offering. We have that. We don't know what X is as far as the selling price. Give us your best offer in a sealed bid.
Well,
Give us your best offer, Executive Hotel. Give us your best offer, Moen, and see which one comes out higher, and then we can use that to perhaps start a new round of negotiations.
Well, I
if we
think as
wanted.
Ross pointed out, that's not how you went into this. You went into this looking at a number of different factors, and you are not comparing apples to apples at this point. You are comparing apples to oranges. Price is a factor, but it's one factor. I think.
Well, this gives us a lot to think about in 2 weeks. Isn't this a wonderful problem to have? I mean, really.
It's wonderful that
We
we've
sat
got
here
four good
Yeah, we sat here with a
projects.
vacant lot that frankly, there was probably very little interest on the part of developers for a lot of years. And now we got them knocking at the door. I think that's wonderful. Are we ready to vote to defer this until the next meeting?
Let's do.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we're going to take a break.
We have a motion to accept
We
correspondence.
have a motion by O'Donnell,
Second.
seconded by Wilburn to defer, or to accept correspondence. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and will be returned at 15 minutes to 9.
For what?
Item number 6.
Okay, folks, we're going to get started again. Item 6 is a hearing on a proposed civil penalty of a $300 fine against Outer Limits of Iowa City. This is a hearing, not a public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Andy Chappell. I'm an assistant county attorney, and as most of you know, I think by now, our office is administering these civil penalties on behalf of the city. And also, as you know, Iowa Code Section 453A.22 provides that when the employee of a business is guilty of violating Iowa Code Section 453A.2 or 453A.36 sub 6, essentially by selling or providing tobacco to a minor, the business can then be assessed a civil penalty. The first civil penalty for each business is a $300 civil penalty. With respect to Outer Limits, and let me also back up and say, I want to thank the council for making the time accommodation and pushing this back a little bit.
No problem.
I appreciate that. Back to the story. With respect to Outer Limits, specifically in this case, we had a juvenile, the police department had a juvenile who went into the business, went up to the bartender, requested change for the cigarette machine. Change was given. I believe the bartender even checked the ID and, for whatever reason, still gave the change and directed the juvenile right to the cigarette machine. I was just given a copy of some correspondence I believe the council has received from the business owner, which appears to do nothing to dispute any of that. Based on those facts, I believe a violation was committed by an employee of Outer Limits of Iowa City, and that Outer Limits of Iowa City should be assessed a civil penalty in the amount of $300.
Any questions from the council? Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I had a question. The person said, I want change for the cigarette machine?
The juveniles are directed specifically to ask for change specifically for the cigarette machine, yes.
And the owner of Outer Limits, or the licensee, notes that the Iowa Code is posted there. Did the owner have his instructions posted in regards to not selling to minors?
I have no idea. I'll give the employee the benefit, or the employer the benefit of the doubt and assume that he did everything in his power to put up any rules he may have had. I just don't think it matters. What triggers the civil penalty is the violation of the state code by the employee.
That's accurate.
I don't know if this is, or were you done, I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if this is, this probably isn't relevant to that, but I'm just curious, in his correspondence, he points out that they don't have a cigarette permit. Can you have a machine and not?
They dropped it.
I believe the correspondence, the way I read it, is that they no longer have the cigarette permit. My understanding is that in fact, the very next day,
They removed the following.
they removed the cigarette machine and likely handed in the permit to your city
They
clerk.
simply let it lapse, and it did not get renewed July 1.
Okay.
And the employee is no longer working there.
That's my understanding as well, but
That's what
based
it was.
solely on the correspondence.
Okay.
But
Is there
they could renew that if they wanted to at any time, that license?
anybody could?
They could apply they would reapply for a new license at that time, yes.
The issue is that non-payment of the fine kicks in a suspension, and the question then becomes, if there's no permit, what is there to suspend? That could come into play if there was a request for a permit made down the road.
Is there a motion to consider resolution assessing the penalty?
So moved.
Moved by Vanderhoff,
Second.
seconded by Wilburn. Discussion? Roll call?
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Champion?
Yes.
Tanner?
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, counsel. Thanks again for accommodating my schedule.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item number 14, consider resolution awarding contract and authorizing the mayor to sign and city clerk to attest a contract for construction of the senior center building envelope waterproofing project.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Champion, seconded by O'Donnell. Discussion.
Can you explain the add-on and what happened with the water coming in?
Linda's here, she knows everything about that.
Probably too much that you want to know.
The original bid, or the original estimate was to cover some repairs to the windows, some tuck pointing, and to repair the front stairs, both sets of front stairs. Earlier this year, we'd had some waterproofing done to the west side of the building, but we didn't do anything under the stairs because there was no anticipation that we would have to remove the stairs. So after this original estimate was taken and submitted to the council, there was a heavy rainstorm, and we had water leakage from the west side of the building right beneath where both stairways are. So it became pretty logical to incorporate doing the water repair under the stairs when we had the stairs out, and then complete the whole project so we could get all the waterproofing done at the same time.
Linda brought it to me at the time. You had approved one number, and it seemed to make good sense that if we were going to do a waterproofing project, let's incorporate all of it into one bid. That's when we changed the bid, and we want to do it, and that's the memorandum you got yesterday and informed you of that.
There's some leakage on the big staircase in the lobby. Is this going to take care of some of that leakage, or is that a
Yes,
different problem?
that leakage is due to a window problem, and the window repairs have been incorporated into this.
Thank you.
Does anyone know how long this waterproofing is supposed to last? Seems like we've done this once before.
The tuck pointing was done once before, and I think that's probably something that will need to be done again in the future because it's the exterior of the building, but the waterproofing that's below ground, I would think would be pretty permanent.
I think you can pretty well tell yourself that we will continue to put money into that building. It's, I don't, how old is it?
1904.
19. So it's 100 years old, and when you're 100 years old, you start to crack.
I like my old car.
Older than
Like your what?
Like my old car.
Even before.
That's older than I am.
As Ross points out, it's a lot like his former car.
Former car.
I don't think there's any building that doesn't require maintenance.
No.
Is there other discussion on this? No. Roll call.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Champion?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 15, consider a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign and city clerk to attest a license agreement for temporary use of public right-of-way between the city of Iowa City, Bill Mahopolis, and Atlas World Grill Incorporated, doing business as Atlas World Grill, for a sidewalk cafe.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Champion, seconded by Vanderhoff. Discussion?
Did we get an answer?
I did get an answer. I believe, if I understood your question, this particular request is from one of the new restaurants on Iowa Avenue. And with that streetscape, that's a 33-foot wide from curb to building sidewalk. And so the Atlas is requesting 12 feet of it for use as a sidewalk cafe, leaving 21 feet of sidewalk. This is a pretty unusual situation because of the configuration of the streetscape there.
Yeah, where the narrow part was that I have been concerned about is that we end up with bike racks and benches and trees.
We are also going to be taking a look at that, but again, the ordinance itself has not changed from the 8-foot requirement.
No, that's fine. But what I was trying to get was the distance between the streetscaping things and the permanent fencing, because I was concerned that if someone was going to put in permanent fencing, and we might be looking at changing this, I wanted to be sure that there was plenty of.
This will come up every year for renewal as well, so we can take a look at that time also.
Okay.
Other discussion?
Dee, you're worried about if there's going to be the required 8 feet or not?
Well, I think there is in this case, but that's always my concern, that 8 is maybe too narrow, and that maybe we should be looking at least 10 foot between streetscaping pieces that are obstacles for pedestrians and whatever the fence is for a sidewalk cafe.
So you think 10 feet in general that we might consider changing our ordinance to?
That's what I've asked to have looked at and brought to us to look at. I don't know what the ramifications are throughout the downtown.
Well, it'd be a lot, I think, on some of the older streets like
Well, I don't know that.
Washington and...
Aren't we
The
kind of in a
couple we-
holding
Right.
pattern just to see how if the 8 feet does not work? I'm sure we're going to
Well,
probably hear about it.
the 8 feet has been in existence for some time.
Right.
We've had more requests for sidewalk cafes based on that 8 feet.
Right.
So maybe we could have
apparently
a work
it's-
session on this down the road.
Well, take
Well,
a
I
look
think-
at it before we start doing renewals for next year.
Well, I would agree with that, except that if we aren't having any difficulties with 8 feet, I don't know why we would change it.
Right.
I think there are some difficulties
That's what we
in
need
a
to
couple of
know.
places.
That's what we need to know.
It is a little more. People in wheelchairs and other things.
Okay, roll call.
Champion?
Yes.
Cantor?
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 16 is consider a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign and city clerk to attest the release of an access sanitary sewer, water main, and utility easement, and an access water main and utility easement located over and across the re-subdivision of Lot 52, Walden Hills, Iowa City, Iowa.
Move the resolution.
Second.
By Vanderhoff, seconded by O'Donnell. Discussion. Roll call.
Cantor?
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Champion?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 17, consider a resolution to offer financial support to the American Red Cross for those in need of assistance and services as a result of acts of terrorism.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Vanderhoff, seconded by O'Donnell. Discussion. Dee, you were at the League of Cities, and I believe this came from that meeting, or at least that's where the
Part of it,
seed was planted.
that was, I brought it back and asked staff to take a look at it. It seemed like a real appropriate thing to do at that time. I think everyone was very frustrated on what they could do, and just making a public statement of support for the areas where the terrorism took place. Subsequently, it appeared that the Red Cross is the vehicle to use to make sure that the dollars get to all the people who have been affected by this in the disaster areas. So I strongly support this and hope you will too.
Other discussion? I certainly would not. I mean, this to me is a symbol of how this community feels. Obviously, the financial assistance is minuscule in relation to the scope of the problem, but I think it does indicate to those folks that the city does feel like we have a concern and we care about those folks. And so I certainly would endorse this resolution.
I'd also mention that the local Red Cross is looking at, keep an eye in the media, that they are going through the process of having trainings for disaster relief, because they have to send trained volunteers out, and people were lining up wanting to know how they could go out and do that. But keep your eye across too for those workshops.
Good.
I too am going to support this, and I think we need to, this will be a small token of helping the people that were victims of the violence. I just want to say, I think that one of the ways that we can work against the violence is to keep doing what we're doing in terms of democracy here in Iowa City, and trying to be as inclusive and have a democratic process that brings people in as much as possible. When people feel they have a voice, I think they're less prone to do violence. And I just wanted to read a quote from Martin Luther King. That's one thing I haven't been hearing in this discussion, just a short quote that he wrote in 1958. He said that I could only close the gap in broken community by meeting hate with love. If I meet hate with hate, I become depersonalized, because creation is so designed that my personality can only be fulfilled in the context of community. When I love, I restore community. So I think we have to try as hard as possible to look at replying to violence with nonviolent means as much as possible.
Other discussion? Roll call.
O'Donnell?
Yes.
Vanderhoff?
Yes.
Wilburn?
Yes.
Champion?
Yes.
Canner?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes. Item 18 is, I guess, public discussion, which we had time before. So item 19, an announcement of vacancies. Previously announced vacancies, the Board of Library Trustees has one vacancy to fill an unexpired term ending July 1st, 2007. Housing Community Development Commission has one vacancy to fill an unexpired term ending September 1st, 2002. These applications must be received by 5 o'clock Wednesday, October 17th. City Council information.
I would just like to tell people and remind people that the ballots are ready for the primary election, and you can vote early at the auditor's office as of today. I voted.
All right.
I would second that, and I'd just like to say I attended one of the senior center functions and watched this group of incredible people get a 20-year award for service to the senior center. And that's truly amazing. And I was wondering, we've rescheduled the dedication of the Skywalk. Does anybody know when that is?
Yes, she told us earlier tonight. It's on
I forgot.
October 4th at 1 o'clock. Unless I can get them to move it to 12. I think over the lunch hour would be great with everybody walking around downtown. But anyway, 1 o'clock on the 4th.
Probably too late to change that.
That's all I have.
Never too late. Dee.
Okay. We've had several people come to the microphone today, and we've gotten emails about this power and electric municipality. There was a forum that was alluded to tonight, and I just thought I would tell you that there are replays of the forum on public power. One of them is tomorrow night at 10:45 p.m. There's another one Thursday at 3:30 a.m. This is on Channel 4. However,
However,
Who are you talking to about these? Oh,
PA
such a recorder for
yeah,
that.
yes. PATV Channel 2 is also going to show it 4 times. And October 3rd at 7:30 p.m., October 5th at 11 p.m., October 8th at 10:30 p.m., and October 11th at 10:30 p.m. So anyone that's interested in listening to that, those are the dates, and I'll give these to our cable TV and have them run the hours.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Stern shot at 3.
On a sleepless night, huh?
Ross. Anything for council time?
Oh,
Hello.
what did you say about sleepy time?
You don't get in the mode for that till about 11 o'clock, right?
Yeah. No, not tonight.
Okay.
3 things. One, again, Dee, Ross, and myself went to the State League of Cities, and I went to some good workshops. One was about municipal telecommunications, where they actually recommend that if you consider that, you piggyback it on a municipal electric franchise. It's much easier to do that with the infrastructure, and that was kind of interesting, and that's something to think about. Also, as I mentioned before, community neighborhood mediation programs taking place in Ames and Dubuque, and something we might want to consider getting going here. And also the idea of study circles. We talked about the process that happened with Parks and Rec and Hickory Hill Trails. I think that was a good collaborative effort, and these kind of collaborative efforts are taking place all over the country, especially with study circles. The National League of Cities is recommending it, and it's being done successfully in Waterloo to deal with racial issues. And I think it's something that we might want to look at, especially in regards to the jail issue. And I'll get more information out to the council and also to the county on those things. And 2, saw Kurt Vonnegut a couple of weeks ago, the author of Slaughterhouse-Five and other books. And I like one thing he said, purpose for him of life is to have fun and have time to fart around. So hopefully I'll be able to achieve some of that.
Maybe we quit on that one.
Just one final thing.
Oh.
It's the New Year's for the Jewish faith, Rosh Hashanah last week, and tomorrow night is Yom Kippur. These are the high holidays of the Jewish religion. And it's a good time for me personally as a Jewish person to have Rosh Hashanah come, because it's a period of renewal, spiritual renewal, and I appreciate that at this time with the events that have happened in the last couple weeks. So I do, though, want to wish everyone a happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Couple things, actually maybe 3. Friday morning, and I don't have the letter with me. Steve, you may have to help me.
Okay.
ACT is having a groundbreaking for their project, which is in the neighborhood of a $40 million project.
I believe it's
This
9:30.
Friday at 9:30, I believe. And I personally would really appreciate, and I'm sure that ACT would appreciate as many of our council folks as possible to be out there. This is a huge event for this community, and I think it's something that really deserves our attention and our respect. So Friday morning at 8:30 for those, 9:30 for those of us who can be there.
I'll be there.
Good. I think it's important. Obviously, our last meeting we did not have public discussion or council time, but I was privileged to go to a ribbon cutting for the Small Mall. There's a store on the corner of Gilbert and Court Street. That is a project that was funded by allocation from our CDBG monies for folks with disabilities. It is anything but a small mall, and I would encourage all of you to stop by. It is the neatest place, and to me, that's a real example of money that's intended for social programs really, really working. Here are folks who have jobs, they're working, they're proud of where they work, they've got a neat little place, and they've got a cute gift shop, a great print shop, art shop, antique shop, coffee shop, Bill, great coffee. So it's really worth stopping down there. I really, and we did that 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a home football game, and there must have been 50 or 60 folks there. So I thought it was just great.
Very good.
Last night, we visited briefly, or listened briefly, for the start of what I suspect will be probably some extensive discussion of electric utility franchise. I talked to Dale earlier this afternoon, and I'd like to have some indication from the council. Obviously, Mid-American Energy is going to want to make a proposal to us. My suspicion is that the coalition who's interested in municipal utilities would also like to make a presentation. And what I would propose with the consent of the council is that we schedule each of those two to come for a half hour, 45 minutes during a work session so that we can get their input. I mean, I really believe, I got my eyes opened last night as to how complicated this thing really is. But I would like to see us, if it's all right with the council, to get a presentation from Mid-American and also from the coalition, and then start our deliberations and have an opportunity to ask some questions. Is that satisfactory?
Good. I think that makes great.
And I think it's best if we do it on two separate nights because of two reasons. We won't get a debate going between the two different groups. And also, work sessions tend sometimes to last a long time. We're probably going to do a better job if we do one each time. So, Dale, if you and with Steve schedule those, and we'll proceed with that. Last night, I misspoke about a letter that was requested from the city of Coralville supporting their convention and tourism center, and the funding that Coralville is applying for is CAT money, not Vision Iowa money. This is a $55 million project for a convention center hotel that Coralville is proposing, and they would like a letter of support from Iowa City for that project. And I see no reason that we should not send them that letter.
No, that's
With your
fine.
concurrence, I will send that letter.
I think it's perfect.
It's for the convention center, correct?
This is not Vision Iowa funds.
This is for the
No.
hotel.
Hotel Convention Center only.
Okay.
That's all it
Right,
applies
okay.
to.
There would be no
And
reason
this
for
is-
us not to send that.
The CAT funds are funds that are for community attractions and tourism, but they are for small projects. So what they're asking for from this is a $4 million grant.
Over 4 years, isn't it?
I don't know whether
I think
for 4
it's
years,
over
but-
3 or 4 years.
But that's about the max that any of the
that's
small
fine.
ones come. And they have to compete with other cities of their equal size for those funds, because those funds are broken down into 3 categories for different sized cities. So the state legislature is making sure that all cities have an opportunity. So this isn't, we wouldn't even be in the same group if we were to apply for CAT.
No, we aren't. And this is just one community helping another, and it's
And
perfectly
I think
appropriate.
it's
Totally appropriate.
Well, do I have concurrence of the council to do that?
Well, there was concern brought up yesterday, which I also share, about the convention center is tied with the proposed Vision Iowa. And
I think their take
for
is,
Iowa Child, I mean,
but I believe Corville's position is that the convention center hotel is a project that will stand on its own whether or not the Iowa Child thing ever comes about.
well,
And the Iowa Child will be applying for Vision Iowa funds, not for CAT.
Different funding altogether.
right, they say it stands on its own, but things are changing all the time with the projects that they're working on. And I think then for my satisfaction, I would like to have some assurance that it is separate and will remain separate. I have a feeling that it won't stand alone, that the convention center will only go if the Iowa Child project goes. And I'm not too thrilled about the Iowa Child project. And so at this time, I prefer not to send that letter. I would like more information and more assurances.
Well, then, if we choose to send the letter, and again, it's certainly only with the concurrence of the council, that letter needs to be, they have to have that letter by Friday. That's when they're making their application.
But this letter is endorsing the convention center. It's not endorsing the Iowa Child.
It addresses only the hotel convention center.
So I don't have any problems with it because I certainly do not support the Iowa Child.
I
I
hear
truly
that.
believe their project and the ones we've been listening to in tonight's meeting and last night's meeting that they will complement one another, and I'm comfortable with sending the letter.
They certainly will complement each other, and I'm prepared to take Corville on their word, and that's...
Me too.
That's fine. Let's send a letter.
Okay, that's all I have.
When you talked to Jim, he said, did he say this will, regardless of whether Iowa Child goes through or not, they're committed to conventions?
Yes, I
There's no
talked to
question
Jim
about
too.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I spoke to
This
Jim
is the
also.
land that they already own.
It's also a really big hill that Corville has to climb to get the project to go. I mean, I think it's going to take a lot of things working perfectly for them. This is a $50 or $55 million project. It's a huge, huge investment. And obviously, they could use, if our letter has any influence at all for them, they can use all the help they can get, I think, on this project.
This project is 60,000 square feet of exhibition space and 30,000 of meeting rooms and 30,000 for banquet.
You know, I think if you need a whole lot more discussion on this, you need to give people notice so you're going to...
I don't think we need a lot of
Either-
discussion.
Discussion
you
is
know,
over.
move on.
Yes. Stephen, do you have any?
Just a reminder, and looking at Marion, your meeting on Monday, the 8th, will likely start in the early or mid-afternoon because you're taking off on...
Do we know the time yet?
No,
No, because we don't know the agenda yet.
we don't have the agenda yet, but I think you're looking at 4 o'clock-ish, possibly.
Okay.
That's all.
You've already deferred about 3 things to it, so...
Right. And a couple of those may not even make it then. Do you have anything else, Marion? Eleanor?
No.
Do we have a motion to adjourn by O'Donnell?
Second.
Second by Vanderhoff. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Goodbye, little darling, we're parting. Our love has only been a lie. You found someone new. There's nothing left to do. Goodbye, little darling, goodbye. Goodbye, little darling, I'm leaving. Kiss me one tender last goodbye.